Hello, well I wanted to say a few things to you in advance of showing you the video that I've got for you this week. It's not the video that I wanted to be showing you. It basically turned out to be a bit of a wild camping disaster, and I've been thinking about it for much of this week in terms of what to do and how best to show it to you. It wasn't a disaster in the real disaster sense. It just didn't go the way it was meant to go, and there were a few reasons for that I want to highlight first, because I didn't articulate them while I was in the middle of it very well, at least. It was to do with the location, it was to do with having a pet with us, and it was to do with the equipment, and because it's new equipment, things that I had overlooked. So I just want to go through those. The location was an area of outstanding natural beauty, and I'd looked into people while camping there. I'd looked into videos of people doing that on YouTube. I'd looked into maps and so on, and I'd found a place that was on a smaller footpath out of the way that would be near to a water source. It looked like a good distance from the information centre that they had there. It's not a national park, but it is like that. So they had an information centre with a parking area, and we were going to go way away from that. The problem with that, when we got there were no camping signs, and basically it freaked us out a bit. We felt as though we were doing something we shouldn't be doing to some extent. Since then I've been reading about trespass law more in the UK. It's a complicated thing, it's not like US law. The rights of way that are being defined now and that have been historically, there's a lot of kind of grey areas to do with it. And in many places while camping is tolerated, it's not a criminal offence anywhere unless it's aggravated trespass. It's a complicated business, but anyway, that feeling of being somewhere where we shouldn't be, even though it was completely in the wild, even though it was my own county, we're talking heathland and so on, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were doing something we shouldn't be doing, and that was making us feel as though we had to be very careful with where we stopped and how visible we were. Ultimately you'll see what happened, but I think I've come round to the conclusion, and I've been looking into people like Nick Hayes who write about this and who campaign about this. I do think it is a human right, and I'm sorry if this sounds a bit ranty, but I think it's a human right to be able to, providing you're being responsible and careful and you're not lighting fires in places that you shouldn't because it's very dry, I think you should be able to sleep under the stars. I think it's really important for health. For me, going through rehabilitation, I found that is really important to be able to have access in that way. And I think we need to find ways, perhaps in the way Scotland are, to make these open areas accessible for people. So there's that. Second thing, because we had a dog with us, she normally has a raw food diet, which doesn't make her too thirsty, but when we're camping we take dried food and she gets really thirsty then. So although we had bottles of water with us, I had 2 litres, more than 2 litres, we had a water purifier as well, we did need to be near to a water source for her. So I had that on my mind. We couldn't just go up on the hills if we couldn't easily get back down to water. There is one point you will see where we're trying to cross over a stream, and we've already crossed over a few, and we get to one, and it doesn't, I don't think in the video, look as bad as it was. It was a good metre down that we'd have had to jump, and then we would have had to land and be sure-footed. The other problem, which I do mention in the video, is that it was forecast for 100% chance of rain later in the night, and we didn't know how much that water level was going to rise. I think we would have got across it if we'd waded, probably, but we had the dog with us, so that was part of the decision that I didn't really clarify. The thing with the equipment, we had the new tent, the Tiger Wall Ultralight 2, the solution dye type, and I hadn't double checked that we had everything that we should have with it. The company that I bought it from have been absolutely fantastic. They've sent new things, but basically we were short of a stake. The tent pegs, we didn't have enough of them. We didn't have enough guy ropes. So you will see a point where we're having problems with the tent, and you might think, why don't they just tie it down? Well, we couldn't, because we didn't have we didn't have enough tent pegs and we didn't have enough guy ropes. I'm not sure that would have been the answer anyway. Ideally, I think if we could have rotated the tent, maybe, but we couldn't really do that because there was, and again, it doesn't come across very clearly, there was quite a sharp drop, and the vestibule entrances, we couldn't have opened the doors. So that's what was going on. I'll now let you watch the video, but before I do, please do let me know what you think. I'm really interested in all of the comments that you leave. It's really good to hear what you have to say, so do that. And if you want to hit that subscribe button so that you hear about my next ventures. We're hoping to go up into Snowdonia this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll camp part way up one of the mountains there. But yes, thank you for your interest, and I hope you enjoy it. Well, we decided today to come to the Forest of Bowland, and we'll camp here, fingers crossed, with the new equipment that we got last weekend. One of the reasons why I'm quite keen to camp here is because it is actually my home county, despite which I've never really investigated this area. I should really give it a bit of time and find out what's really here, particularly sort of getting away from the roads a bit. We've got a bit of sun. Crashed 18th of the 8th, 1941. That's almost today's date. I was just kidding when I said we were coming to my home county. Really, we've come to Scotland. Well, what I just did was a great example of what not to do, because we couldn't cross the stream easily where the footpath was meant to come out. We tried to cut across here, and there's another area here that I'm just going across now, where basically I could see that it looked as though there was a bit of a stream. And so I was being really cautious, and I put my foot on like a little mound of grass, but I slipped off it and went into a bog. So I've got one foot that is it's just been in a bog, and I haven't brought extra shoes with me. But I did have my Birkenstock EVA foam sandals that I very nearly brought, but then I was ruthless and I thought, no, nothing unnecessary. And I went in, I don't know whether I mentioned it last week when we were in the North Pennines area of outstanding natural beauty. This isn't actually a national park, it's an area of outstanding natural beauty. I did the same thing actually. I slipped into the stream and I got one wet foot, and that day it dried overnight because it was so hot, but I don't think we'll get that this time. Chesky squeezed through the two lower rungs there. She wasn't having any of the style. So here's the thing, it actually shelves quite deeply there. I think we could easily just walk across there, but when you get to them, it's quite deep on this side of them. And because we've got heavy backpacks on, I'm not keen. The other thing though is that, and we have walked around a little bit as well, there's nowhere else. The other thing is that there is rain forecast, and so because there's no way back, if we choose to go across here, I think I could jump it quite easily. But tomorrow we don't know how high the water level will be, so we'd be stuck. So we're thinking we're going to go back onto the main path and just see if there's anything along there. Come on.
Come on, chicks.
No, she's not happy.
That's it.
Good girl. That one, no problem. The other one was deeper. Well, that's where we were trying to get through. Crossed over the first stream, but actually the area further away, you can see just there. And we wanted to go up that valley, but there's no way out of it at the top end. So instead we're going to go down here. And there's a place with an intriguing name. It's Fiendish something or other, or Fiend. There's a fiend involved. I'll double check it and confirm exactly what that is. But I'm quite intrigued. So one of the downsides to being really little is that sometimes you get buried in ferns. They sort of come up above my head. There are more coming up now. See if I can give you an idea. I imagine a lot of people doing this route, it's not such a problem for them. Oh, good grief. Well, that's actually quite a relief. Seagulls. The option was to go, there's a path that goes up the side of the hill, but then it goes up and it goes onto the top. And there'd be quite a long way before we met with water again. And we want to have a water source ideally. So we are now thinking we're going to go and hopefully find a little bit that's not quite so windy, sort of tucked around here, just on this flat part here. One of the things I haven't said at all so far today is the time. It's now 4:45. We got here about 2 o'clock-ish, thinking that we'd have a bit of a walk and then pitch quite late-ish. We're sort of not wanting to be wandering around on the heath when it's quite late and potentially not finding anyone. Well, I'd been hoping that originally down there it might be less windy, but look at that tree, the angle it's at. How and where to stop. There's an area straight ahead there, but it's quite exposed. This whole area is a bit of a wind tunnel. It gets really, it picks up a lot, and we'd hope to put, I'm just crossing a stream here, lots of streams to cross. We're going to go back up and hopefully we'll get to that track up there and have a better view from there. So that track, I don't know if you're able to see there, that's where we're hoping to go. It's really not turning out as I'd planned, which was to go down to the right there, down that valley. We're just wandering around at this point, trying to figure out how we might find somewhere flat, ideally near water. It's absolutely glorious scenery, but haven't seen anybody else around for quite a while now. Yeah, it's really windy. We'd hoped that this would be a possible water source, and there is no water in it. It's not really turning out. The way last week everything went brilliantly, this week it's just not happening like that. Don't know what sort of caterpillar he is, or indeed she. This has not been a successful trip, at least unless something changes and we don't do what we think we're going to do. Which is basically pack up and probably go home unless we can find something on the way. The wind here, I mean, this is a tent that people take on the PCT. I'll show it you properly in a moment, but there are some strong gusts that are coming right down the valley here, and they're just flattening the tent. And we don't want to sort of turn the tent around so it's at a different angle, because there's a drop off. And this is basically the only place we found that looked remotely suitable to pitch the tent, because everywhere else there are rocks and there's like long grass, or there are just problems everywhere else. But this little patch of grass is okay, but it is on an incline, and we don't really want to be able to take the tent, because then we'd be stepping off. I don't know whether you can see, but there's a sort of drop down. And the thing is, we don't know whether well, we know that there is rain due in at 8 o'clock, and it is now, let's see, it's now just coming up to 6:30. So we think there's going to be even worse weather coming in. And given that we're only about an hour and 20 minutes from home, I don't know. I mean, it's not as though we absolutely have to stay here. Chesky is not too happy. I don't know, what do you think? What would you do? So that's where we were, just that little bit there. There's no phone signal here, so we're we can't really check if there is like worse weather coming in or anything. I think if I were able to check, then it would be a different matter too, but that kind of doesn't leave me feeling very easy about it. This area, by the way, it might look at times as though like this bit doesn't look too bad for camping, but it's actually just part of the same wind tunnel. But there are kind of more bits on the ground, and there have been sheep around here kind of just happily grazing too. But it's more bumpy actually underfoot. So that one bit, you would have thought it would be okay, but it's surprising how the wind was hitting that tent really. And yet, I sort of think probably maybe it would have been okay. I just don't want to risk it when it, don't know. Anyway, yes, maybe it's just one of those things, you put it down to experience. I'm just talking about how well we feel we know this place now. We've walked past these same things over and over. Those trees over there on the side of the hill. Improbable trees. Oh gosh, there were lots of little grouse or partridges. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing them. So I know it's quite different in places like in the US, where you know you've got the big national parks, but you don't have networks of footpaths, and you certainly can't just go off across somebody else's land. And we kind of, maybe we're a little spoilt in England and in the UK, and that we can do that. That, you know, we've got historical footpaths and you just go off, and that's okay if it's a footpath. And when it's a national park or an area of outstanding natural beauty, you sort of feel that, you know, even more you should be able to access it. And they are sometimes trying to conserve land, sometimes they're trying to just use it for grouse shooting, which is destructive. You probably know my thoughts on that. Because it stops it being used for other things. This is the Forest of Bowland and it still hasn't been reforested. You know, we were really trying to find a way to do it and feel okay about it and not feel like we were doing something we shouldn't be doing really. But still do it in a way that was responsible basically. Yeah, but also thinking, well, if we go beyond this part, maybe it'll be okay then. It will be completely wild, it'll be on the heath or whatever, and I could see where, on my map, I could see where there were streams and so on. It's just not worked at all. It's sort of a bit painful because it's my own county, it's Lancashire, it's where I'm from. It doesn't feel like it's where I'm from at all. I mean, it's completely new to me, this landscape. So there are partridges. They seem to have run all the way down here ahead of us. There goes some more. Look at them go. Woo! Well, the rain that was forecast for 8 o'clock, with 100% certainty that there would be rain between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at least, and some likelihood before that, we're now feeling the rain. So It is here. And we're just approaching the road where the car is. And these are the sort of signs at the entrance, reminding people to take their litter home, no barbecues or fires. It's owned by United Utilities, who manage water for northwest England. And you can see there are sort of little areas for people to sit and so on. Most people don't go much beyond this part, really.